Hello everyone and welcome to the final round of the UzChess 2025. We are in for a treat. It is Nodirbek Abdusattorov versus Praggnanandhaa. As we've mentioned in the previous video, Nodirbek, if he wins, he's the sole leader going into the final round. He wins the tournament. Pragg is trailing by a full point, so he needs to beat Nodirbek on demand with the black pieces just in order to tie and force tie breaks, but only in the case that Sindarov draws against Parham or loses against Parham. If Sindarov wins and Pragg defeats Nodirbek, then Sindarov will win the tournament, as he will be half a point ahead of Pragg. Luckily for Pragg, Sindarov and Parham drew their game fairly early on, and he knew that if he takes a win with black, he has very good chances of, hard to say if winning the tournament, but it's the first step. Without it, there are no steps. So let's check it out. Nodirbek with white opens with pawn to e4. We have pawn to c5. If you want to win, you have to play fighting chess. So the Sicilian it is. We have knight to f3, pawn to e6, and pawn to d4. We have captures, knight to c6, going for the Taimanov variation, knight to c3, and knight to f6, the four knights of the Sicilian. And usually knight captures on c6 is played, sometimes knight d to b5, also very popular. A3 also can be played, many moves can be played here, but here we have bishop to f4. It's a fairly rare move. For example, Fabiano Caruana used it to beat Nijat Abbasov in the 2023 FIDE World Cup, and he played a very, very nice game. But here we deviate very early on. d6 and bishop to b5, and already we are out of any databases that include Grandmaster games. So bishop to d7 and knight captures on c6, followed by, there is a game where b captures here, bishop captures on c6 was played, or rather no, bishop captures is a known move, b captures on c6 was played by Pragg, and it is now as of move 8 that we have a completely new game. And look at the situation on the clocks. Nodirbek definitely surprised Pragg. How much was Pragg surprised? Let's see what happens next. We have bishop to a4. Nodirbek plays instantly. You can see that he is still well above an hour and 30 minutes on the clock. And now pawn to e5 by Pragg, spending 13 minutes on this move. But it is a very important decision. You weaken the d6 pawn. And, you know, if you're not going to be able to pull off d5 at any point in the game, then you're probably just going to be worse. So bishop to g5. Pawn to h6 and the bishop captures, queen captures on f6, and now queen to d3. Again, Nodirbek playing his preparation. He's still above an hour and 30 minutes on the clock. And Pragg plays pawn to a5. Spent some 3 minutes here, so again, a pretty big decision. Played fairly quickly. Let's see how it goes for him. We have castles queen side by Nodirbek. This is the first move where he spent some time. He already dropped the hour and 17 minutes on the clock, so you know, pretty long thing, basically the first one of the game. Bishop to e7, and now you could play something solid like pawn to f3, and then, you know, just keep building, you know, push on the king side. But he goes for rook to f1, immediately stating his intentions. g3, f4 is the plan, and he wants to go after the black king. We have castles king side by Pragg, pawn to g3, and rook 8 to b8, nicely aligning that rook with the b pawn. It's the only open file on the board, so it makes sense. Probably rook b7, the other rook comes to the b file, or maybe even rook b4. A5, with the inclusion of a5, b4 is also guarded, so you know, maybe that's the plan. Rook b4, rook d4, maybe trade off a pair of rooks. So Pragg definitely has options here. And here Nodirbek played pawn to f4 right away. I'm just going to include a sideline that is knight to d5, because it's very interesting. You either win the dark square bishop, and then you weaken the d6 pawn, you win that, and you have no problems. Or basically c captures on d5 is forced, and then you capture, and then after queen captures, now rook b4. Looks very nice, but queen f5, and you no longer have to worry about any sort of attack. Pragg might have something like captures, the bishops of opposite color. And, okay, d6 will always be weak, so it's a nice position for both. But, okay, after rook 8 to b8, Nodirbek played pawn to f4. He's playing in Uzbekistan. This is the final game. He has the white pieces. I imagine he also wants to just beat Pragg straight up. So rook to b4 by Pragg. And now comes queen to a6. Another slight imprecision by Nodirbek. He should kick away the rook from b4 first. Now, either forcing the rook back and then, you know, closing with f5, or force an exchange with rook d4, then go queen a6, you go after the pawn, and the rooks probably get traded off on the d file. But he played queen to a6 right away, and now there is no more pawn to a3 because Pragg plays e captures on f4. G captures, and rook F to B8. Now the pawn on B2 is hanging, and you don't have time for A3 or to kick away the rook from the B file. So pawn to E5, we have queen to F5, and now E captures on D6. Now maybe you could capture on B2 if this bishop was not hanging, but if rook captures on B2, you're just going to capture the bishop on E7, and you don't really have anything here. C5 would be very tricky as you're attacking the bishop on A4. If the bishop moves, you can checkmate on C2, but the rook can simply capture it, so it's not really a big deal. So that's why bishop to F6 by Pragg, and now we have bishop to B3, closing the B file, but A4, I mean, it's definitely a problem. We have queen to C5, putting pressure on the C3 knight, and now the problem is, of course, you don't want to allow bishop captures on C3, and of course, you don't want to allow pawn to A4. And it seems like maybe you could, do knight A4, and it solves all of your problems. However, after rook captures on A4, you're just getting checkmated. We're going to show it because it's a nice line. Bishop captures on B2, check, king D2, and after queen to C3, check, king E2, rook to E8 with check, and the king is getting checkmated. King to F2, queen to E3 check, king to G2, bishop H3 check, king to H1, and now just a nice queen E4 check, and okay, that's just a nice checkmate. So after queen C5, rook F to E1 by Nodirbek, and now bishop captures on C3. If I just show you why bishop captures on C3 was allowed, then you'd be like, but why did he allow it? Well, now you know. B captures on C3, queen captures, and now king to B1, although stops queen A1. If you do that, just bishop F5, and now there are too many threats. Just captures here, the C pawn is pinned, also A4 is coming. So not a lot you can do. So that's why queen to D3, Nodirbek dreaming of a queen trade here. Pragg says not today. Queen to A1 with check, king D2, and now queen back to F6. Another incredibly precise move by Pragg, saying that if you go back with king to C1, I'm just going to play A4. Then the bishop has to move, the B file gets taken, and there's not much for you here. So after queen to F6, pawn to C3, trying to do something because there's nothing Nodirbek can do here, and now Pragg just ignores him. Bishop to F5. And there's not a lot you can do here. If Nodirbek moves the queen, queen F3, queen G3 or something, then you're going to capture on D6, and after the king moves, you can even just trade queens. And the position is winning for Pragg, and pretty much anything else is winning as well. You can trade, captures. If you capture on C6 to defend on C3, you can just play A4. If bishop C2, you can even trade, captures, pawn to A3, rook to B2 next, and the rook and pawn endgame is completely winning for Pragg. So after bishop F5, Nodirbek plays the move from the thumbnail, and that is queen captures on F5. He gives up the queen for the bishop and rook, and he says, all right, beat me if you can. I have a passed D pawn. I do have, something to play for here. And instead of capturing right away, Pragg throws in a beautiful Zwischenzug, rook to D4. And the engine says, okay, it's okay to just capture the queen, but rook D4 is a very human-like move and very annoying for your opponent, I imagine. Because now Nodirbek is forced to capture, and he's going to lose the D6 pawn. And it's going to take time for this pawn to come all the way to D6 and beyond. So, okay, queen captures on F5, Pragg captures the queen, king to C3, and now just queen to D7, preparing to gobble up the pawn, rook to E5, and queen captures on D6. So much better for your opponent to have a pawn on D4 that's not a pass pawn than on D6 that is a pass pawn. We have rook D to E1 and king to F8, not even allowing a trade of rooks. We have king to D3 and rook to D8, going after the pawn on D4, rook 1 to E4, defending, and now just queen to B4. Trying to get behind the white king, A4 is coming, and you will try to somehow, win material or checkmate the white king. We have pawn to F5 by Nodirbek and pawn to A4. We have bishop to C4, queen to B1 with check, and king to C3. And here, I imagine Pragg was mostly focused on reaching time control because he's below 1 minute on the clock, and you need to reach move 40 to be granted additional 30 minutes. So he gave a couple of checks, queen C1 check, king to D3, queen B1 check, king to c3, and now rook to b8, preparing rook b4 in some lines, but you have to be careful. We have rook e3, queen c1 check, we have king to d3, another queen to d1 check, king to c3, queen to a1 with check, king to d3, and queen to b1 with check, king to c3, and now you have to be careful not to repeat the position 3 times. Here we have pawn to g6. The idea is that if you go queen c1 check, king d3, and rook b4, going after the bishop is just mate in 1. So you have to make room for the black king. So Pragg plays pawn to g6, and now look at this. F captures, we have queen to c1 with check, king d3, and now rook to b4. And that pawn is dangerous, but it all works out if you play correctly. Rook e8 check, king to g7, and Nodirbek refuses to resign. He finds poison where there almost is none. He plays rook to g8 with check. Sacrifices the rook to try and catch Pragg in a very, very tricky line. G captures, king captures was played. If you don't capture, you're just going to get checkmated. Rook f3 check, king g5. This captures opens up with check. And now if you go king to h4, king h5, you just get checkmated. Rook to h3 with check. And if you go king to h4, then rook to f4 with check. And again, it's just not enough. Queen will have to move. Queen captures on f4, and then you promote the pawn to a queen, and you're just up a full bishop. So not the best. But after rook to g8 with check, king captures on g8, g captures on f7 with check, and now what do you play here? That's the question. Pragg has 10 minutes on the clock. You guys have an eternity. You know, feel free to pause the video and try to find the only move that wins convincingly for Pragg while I give you a couple of seconds. So most certainly not king to f8. That would fall to rook to e8. And what you have to be really careful about is king to g7. It seems like the way to go because you cover the queening square. But what Nodirbek was hoping for was rook to g3 check, king h7, and now you bring a knight into the game with check, king h8, and rook to g8 checkmate. This was Nodirbek's final attempt at saving the game, but Pragg played the absolute best, as did you guys. You know, in your mind, I imagine king to h7, and now there is nothing. Now bringing a knight into the game, it can be done, but after king g7 and a couple of checks, not much else after king to e7. So here f8 queen, Nodirbek just brings a queen into the game, and Pragg plays queen captures on c4 with check, and he was in this position on move 49 that Nodirbek Abdusattorov resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Pragg wins on demand with the black pieces and forces tie breaks against Nodirbek Abdusattorov, as they are the only two now with the same amount of points. 2 blitz games will be played. They're probably being played as I'm recording this, so once both of them are played, I'm going to upload that as well. And of course, you guys will be well informed. Here you resign because if you go down the board, it's just a very quick checkmate. Rook b2 check, king to d1, queen to c2 with check, and now, well, pretty much anything but rook to b1 also. And after queen c4 check, king to e4 can be played. Also, you just go for a nice checkmate, or if white really wants to be annoying, you can just win the queen, king e6, capture the queen, and then checkmate white in a couple of moves. So yeah, beautifully done by Pragg, winning against Nodirbek in the final round. Like I said, already in round 3, this is the one that I'm looking for, and I'm hoping, and I was hoping that both of them can win the tournament, upon facing each other in the final round. Still the case. Pragg wins on demand, and both of them can still win the tournament and the $20,000 first place prize. So yeah, that's the game. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, I will keep you guys informed on what happens in the Blitz section. I would like to thank Felix Steinel, Seshadri Subramanian, Andrei Shrade, Johan Kron, and James Anderson for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.